but no, what's funny is with Simon and I with our recording. And just so you know, it's recording now.
Perfect.
Should have given you a countdown on
No, you're all good. Is there something I can share to like? Is there like a link I can share or something like that?
Yeah, you can share it over to if you just share it in the chat. There should be a chat button for you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can share it to me right there.
Oh, I just mean like so I can tweet it out or something like that.
Oh, yeah. So I can send that to you in the chat. That would be the smart thing to do. Here, hang on.
We're chilling, dude.
Let's
We're
see
chilling.
here.
Big chilling.
I'm gonna do the studio chat. We got Twitch.
See if I can figure out the whole chat thing. Oh, there it is. There's a button.
There we go.
Wow.
I had it in all caps, so it looks like I'm yelling at you. But
I don't care. Yell at me all you want. It's your podcast, man. We're chilling.
But what's funny is there was some video that Craig Reynolds from the Downbeat and Straight from the Path was doing one of his, setup videos or whatever.
Yeah.
And this was like just a couple of months ago. And I heard Simon helping him out, and I heard him talk, and it was the first time I had heard him speak. Because we literally just like we chat, like our band chat is like Twitter DMs. Like that's it. That's all we do.
It starts like that,
man.
A
shared file. Like that's it.
Well, that's crazy. That's insane that you guys. I mean, that you're putting out music like that. With just that. Oh gosh.
Yeah, he sends over the instrumental. I do the vocals. He gives me any input, or like if he sends me it's yet to be that he sent me an instrumental that I'm not just like, oh, this is sick. He would take the criticism, I'm sure. Maybe. I don't know. We'll find out someday.
You've never talked to him, so
yeah, right. Because I asked him, I was like, should we like do some group chats like this, to he's like, I don't like being on camera. I was like, you help out with like the biggest music podcast on the planet.
Well,
like one of them at least.
When you're an editor, you're an editor, there's a reason the camera points away. I've had to be on.
True.
I've had to be on the show. So I work for a TV show as part of my job, and I've had to be on the show a few times where we're like, it's like a farm to table food show. So every once in a while we'll grab people and be like, hey, try this, see what you think. Sometimes people don't show up. It's like a Wednesday at 11 a.m. No one's hungry, so they're not going to try it. So we're like, hey, just like hop on here and pretend to be some random dude. But the problem is like I don't come up with anything good. Like I have edited hundreds of these segments and heard people say everything from the top to the bottom, and all I could think was, wow, that's good. And that's it. And I was like, this is unusable. Like, what am I doing here? So there's a reason you don't like the camera pointed at you,
Yeah. But like I agree though. Like I it's funny though, because like I started doing this and started kind of editing out of necessity, right? Because when you first start doing your own little show and like you're not a Craig Reynolds or somebody that already has like people that are going to want to hear what you have to say. I joked about this a little bit in the last podcast I recorded with the band from New York, where I was like, you realize like pretty early on, and it does make sense that you're like, wait, nobody cares who the host is, but I digress. But I learned, I was like, oh, I guess I got to get like video editing software, and then I got to figure out how to work this.
Hit me up,
and
man.
You end up picking it up. Now I'm nowhere near somebody being an editor for a TV show, but
shoot me questions,
it was an interesting thing to pick up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's super interesting, and it's weird when you have that bug. Like when you think of like an editor and they're like hunched over, and I have terrible posture, but like there's something that I enjoy about it, because you get these like raw files of people that are just like stuttering through their answers. I had this one guy we interviewed at this dam, and poor guy could not get through the interview without like freezing, and like he was a terrible interview. And I warned my boss. I said, hey, this is gonna be bad. And I sent him the cut, and he was like, what do you mean? This guy was awesome, we should go back to him. And I was like, that's the biggest compliment ever, because he like did a good job. The poor guy was just really nervous. But anyway, I love that side of things. So
well, that's what's, I think editing is an underappreciated art form, right? Like a lot of people obviously think of like, it's just like doing what you would think of like with the most, I think of like a favorite show of mine, like Always Sunny in Philadelphia or something that, right? You think of like cutting back and forth to the camera at the right time, kind of just making sure the transitions are good. But it's like people don't realize how much editing makes or breaks movies, film, news. Like I think like people always talk, obviously one of the biggest movies of all time, that's a great example of this, is Star Wars. Like the original Star Wars movie, the real reason why it did so well was the editor basically made the movie.
it was supposed to be like a B movie.
Yeah. George Lucas put this thing together, and obviously it was original and it was great. And I mean, it pulled from a lot of other, older sci-fi stuff. But without the editing, that's the thing though. I don't even know the name of the editor.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
It's unsung,
but it was like the unsung hero. The unsung
sometimes
hero.
That's how we prefer it. It's like, don't talk to me. Like, stay away from me.
If I wanted to be in the limelight, I'd be on camera,
exactly.
like you were saying.
Pay me
earlier.
for this job, and I'll be proud of it, and that's enough for me. I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I get it. But that's cool though. Are you out like in LA area?
No, not at all.
Where are you at on the West Coast?
I'm about 4 hours east of Seattle, is the way my wife describes it.
Oh, okay. So you're Washington country.
Yeah. So
right.
Spokane is the name of the town. It's like a kind of medium-sized market that occasionally gets hit by bands and things like that. But a lot of times we're skipped over just because it's such a jaunt. And when you're up in the Northwest, it's such a jaunt for most bands to like go from one show to the next is usually like 4 to 5 to 6 hours. Whereas like apparently on the East Coast, they're like, I can go 45 minutes and there's the next show. So yeah.
Well, it's like even for me in the Midwest, it's like we've got Chicago by me, and then we've got Milwaukee. That's an hour away that you could go to like the second show.
Yeah.
So yeah, people, whether you live in an area like you do, where it's like a long hike, or I'll hear about that from people in like Canada, like on the west side of Canada, where they get like one band a decade.
Yeah.
And then, like, because there's like so little amount of like, big cities on the west side of Canada, really, that like, the second a show is within 6 hours, they're like, oh, it's only a 6-hour drive. It's like, I have never driven that far to show in my entire life. Like I don't know that I would. Yeah, I'm so spoiled.
The worst is when you do that and then you're like, oh, this is awesome. Like you have the time of your life. And then you see like they announce the next month they're coming just to your city. And you're like,
yeah, like on a B market.
I could have saved myself like a lot of time, but it's, it's still fun. I almost drove to Salt Lake City one time to see Currents. And that would have been an 8-hour one way. And then I would have driven 8 hours back. And that thankfully didn't end up happening because then they did come to my area. And I was like, okay, this is fine.
Yeah, that's the gamble you got to kind of present yourself with, right? Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. To get going on things here, I'm happy to have you here. I'm here with, for people listening for the recording side of things, here with Ian Loe, who is the vocalist and guitarist of the band The Cutting Tides, which you guys have listed as just from the West Coast. So is Sean also from the same state, or is he from like a different area? Is he from California or Oregon?
He's a fiction of my imagination, actually. He's from Sacramento area. So
okay, I gotcha. So I was sort of right. One of you's from California. I didn't have that completely.
No,
off.
We're chill. It's the West Coast. You're just like, oh, those hicks. Whatever.
Oh yeah. Everyone thinks of Hicks when they think of the West Coast. They don't think of where I live at all. No, but happy to have you here. Obviously, The Cutting Tides, as we've been talking about a little bit on the stream here, is a 2-piece metal band out of the West Coast with your bandmate Sean playing. Is he doing bass? Right? Is kind of his role in the band?
He does bass and he takes care of drums and most of the synth as well.
Kind of the programming, production bit of that stuff.
You
do the vocals and guitar.
Yeah, for our first EP, we sent everything to me, and then like I kind of mixed and mastered everything. But he does a lot of like when the writing happens, he does a lot of like the computer work type of stuff. So he's got those talents, and then they just kind of work well with mine. So worked out.
Yeah, well, that's great to have, kind of like everyone that, having two people that kind of take all the sides of what a band is on the different facets of things. That's cool. What we're gonna do today is kind of break down a little bit where you come from with music, where your specific influences are. If you've played in other bands in the past, or kind of where your trajectory is there. And then I thought it'd be cool to break down, since you sent over all the stuff for your yet to be announced EP. But I'm guessing announced with the single on Friday.
Basically, yeah.
And again, like anyone that hears this on live stream, it's just going to be a nice little tidbit.
Welcome to it.
For everybody that's hearing this, it'll already be announced. It'll be the EP Drawing the Dead and Desperate, which is supposed to be out next month. And we can kind of do a breakdown of songs track by track. I have a couple of questions, especially on the fourth song that'll be interesting, because you have listed obviously the Jack Murray of 156 Silence. But it also seems like there might be another feature in there on the 4th track as well. Either that, or
way.
you guys did something cool there that we'll dive into when we get
in
there.
a way.
But what I like to do is start off with people to kind of break the ice. So I think we've done that in the first 8-9 minutes here to begin with. Tell me what you've been listening to a lot lately. Tell me if there's like a band you want to shout out, if there's things you've been listening to on repeat a little bit, kind of what would be on like your Spotify on repeat or the equivalent of.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, my Twitter handle, and that's where this entire thing started, was on Twitter. I was just like, man, I miss writing music, and so I just tweeted out some stupid thing like, does anyone want to write music? Like, and this random guy responded. I hadn't interacted with him too many times, but my Twitter handle has been for a while 156/Squeege, and that's because 156 Silence. You know, there's something about that band that just scratches the itch in my brain. That's just like, and then I always take my favorite bands and I'm like, oh, they're probably not as good as I'm saying. Like, I'm probably biased. And then you listen to them in a new context, or you hear a new song, or you see them live or something. You're just like, this just like transports me to another realm. So those guys,
right,
absolutely amazing. And that's why the fact that we got Jack Murray on a single is like, I was like, we were both like geeking out. It was like kids at a princess party, you know. It was like, we were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. So so they're crazy. Their new album, People Watching, is awesome. Go check that out. Sorry, that's my dog in the background also saying People Watching is a great album.
Well, I was going to say, what a time to have your kind of single for this upcoming release be with that band, because man, that album is making a little bit of moves. You know what I mean? Like it is. You know, I work for a website that does a little bit of music news, the New Metal Agenda.
Yeah.
And they were ranting and raving about it as well. I checked it out and I was like, how have I not listened vehemently to this band before? Like, this is like so up my alley. It's so good. So yeah, definitely worth a shout out, and definitely great in the context of what we're going to talk about. Right. So, definitely, again, like can't say enough good things about that new album, People Watching. If anyone has not checked it out and you listen to anything heavy, you have to check that record out.
Yeah. And I've gotten the privilege to talk to a few of those guys to get to know them a little bit, not like crazy, but and just really sweet people, really, really amazing people. And when you see, you know, someone like that you've been rooting for a long time finally get something, you know, finally get some attention, and finally seeing some people paying attention, you're like, man, there's nothing better than this feeling. Like, so proud of those guys. I will shout about them till the ends of the earth. But
yeah, no, and again, like I think they're sort of like the best encapsulation of like this new era of like, you know, new metal isn't looked down upon anymore.
Yeah.
As it was like several years ago, even like less than a decade ago. It was kind of really at that time a little bit of a joke, right?
Mm-hmm.
And bands like them, or, you know, there's a lot of heavier bands. I would say like even like a really heavy band like Alpha Wolf, or like all these different bands that really pull in these, you know, new metal elements that were, you know, kind of getting pioneered in the late 90s, early 2000s, and kind of mixing them with more synth heavy stuff and kind of the more modern metal elements. It's great to see a band like this, like, that does it so well, get recognized for that. I just think it's
absolutely
really cool.
Yeah, I think it's throw in whatever you want creatively, like just try everything. And I think they're a great example of that. They just toss in whatever they're passionate about, whatever they're feeling at the time, and that's the way to do it.
Yeah, and it rips, which is really all that matters, right?
Yeah, exactly.
To go from that, before we get into the EP and the kind of start of this project, let's go back for you. Go back as far back as you can really think of. You know, obviously you said you're a vocalist. You know, you do some brutal vocals, and if you're the person that was also doing the more melodic singing parts and all the different, like, you got a lot of range. So that's really, really cool. And the guitar riffs are sludgy, and, you know, you've got some of those alien noises that make you think that you're gonna die when you're listening to it in the car, which in a good way. I make those noises as well when I play guitar. I try to anyway. So I'm right there with you. But let's go back as far as you can. Kind of tell me where music first became a big thing in your life, and kind of go from there with like songwriting, how you got both into doing vocals and guitar, any other instrumentation you were doing.
Yeah. So I, unfortunately, so I'll start here. My father-in-law is a big music guy, just like loves music. And I'm surrounded by a lot of people who really love music. But the unfortunate thing was, when I was growing up, I only listened to like Christian radio. That was all I was allowed to listen to. And, there's some good stuff there. I did plenty of praise and worship and learned music in that realm. But, I heard Bon Jovi on my friend's like speakers one day, and I was like, Mom, I came home and I was like, Mom, can I buy some Bon Jovi on iTunes? Like, my friend's into this and I kind of jam it. And she's like, nah, like stay in the Christian genre. So I was like, okay. So I went and I found Christian rock, like Skillet. I became obsessed with the band Red. That was like I know like 90% of their songs on guitar. Phenomenal band. And then found Christian metal. And the unfortunate thing about that is that after Christian metal, I transferred into kind of regular metal, and I skipped like generations and generations and generations of like songs that everybody knows. The ones that you're like, you haven't heard this song? I'm like, no, I'm sorry. Like, I wish I could tell you otherwise, but so I get a lot of flack about that from my father-in-law and from people. And it's like a song starts playing on the radio, and they're like, do you know this band? And I'm like, no, I've never heard this song in my life. And they're like, are you serious? It's like Journey or something. I'm like, sorry. Like, I love it. It's great. There's nothing wrong with it. I just skipped it and fell in love with metal in that way. So, as far as writing music goes, I really kind of started in high school. Me and my brothers and a friend of ours, we kind of had this little band called Memoria, and we made these like songs, and we were like, oh, it's perfect that it's 6 minutes and there's only like one main riff, and like it sounded horrible, and like, but we had a great time with it. And then going into college, I decided I was going to study some music. So I studied music theory and that kind of thing. Was really more interested in the production, but wasn't able to kind of get into that based on the program. And left college and didn't touch it for a while because I ended up with a broadcasting degree. And so one day like I said, I really missed it, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, it was like kind of the winter time where you get the doldrums and you're like, I just need something to do. And so tweeted out, hey, does anyone want to write music with me? And I had one guy respond, and he said, yeah, what do you got in mind? And it just worked out fortuitously, because like when I listen to music, the last thing I hear is usually like the drums. Obviously the beat, that's a big thing, but I don't really listen to like the intricacies of a drum part, or to be honest, the bass part. And so that's why my musical partner, Sean, is perfect, because it's like he listens to those things first and mainly. And so he's able to kind of pick up that side of it. And then I just yell and, make weird noises on the guitar. Like, that's the easy part. I'm like, all right, yeah, I can do that. So I'm like, hey, write me this. And he's like, okay. So he just goes along with whatever weird ideas.
But no, that makes that, again, that's kind of the era we're in with music now. You can, because as we were talking about a little bit before going live, like that's basically how I ended up doing at least one of the projects that I'm in with Simon for Dead Inside, where it was, I think it was him that he was just like, I've had these instrumentals for forever, and does anybody want to do vocals? And I sent him like a cover I had done of a Silent Planet song, and he's like, all right, we're gonna do this. And it's weird to think about, like, this is like sort of the era we're in, that this is how music projects can start, as like posting online weird. And the next thing you know, you're making music with somebody you had never met before. And it's like a weird dynamic from like what you think of as a recording project or as a band.
Oh, absolutely.
From like when you and I would have been younger, right? It just doesn't even seem in the realm of reality. Have you found that it's been like a smooth, you kind of already said this, have you found it's been like a smooth transition for both of you in that vein, that you just kind of hit the ground running and then you just kind of, mold this together like pretty quickly? Because I mean, you guys released an EP last year that was 7 tracks. You got an EP coming out this year. You're clearly like going pretty prolific with it as far as the songwriting goes. Was there any kind of hesitation there, or did you just kind of really hit the ball running with it and just like, come whatever may,
Yeah, well, I think your point, the barrier to entry for music has gotten so much lower, and for many things. I mean, I'm a photographer as well, and even photography, you've got iPhones now that can take pictures that are a lot of times even better than like a professional camera can. And the same thing goes for music. You can have 2 guys or gals or whatever that are across nations and just are like, yeah, I want to write music. I've never met this person, but like, let's try it. And it works. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it's like, I don't know if that could have happened the way it has. And so, but the other side of that coin is that I think with social media and with other things, we expect perfection all the time. We expect our first EP, our first song that we write to be like 10 out of 10 out of 10 and it to be perfect. And we ran into that a few times. And I think we've evolved our process. That first EP, we got most of the way through it and then found something, I think it was like drums or something like that. And we completely re-recorded everything, just started from scratch again. And have since completely changed the way we did it this time. That first time I mixed and mastered it and I did okay. It sounds like an EP. It doesn't sound like a great EP, but like I'm proud of it and I'm proud of where we came. But this time we went to someone who would actually know how to do that. So that kind of changed our process and the way we thought of it. We didn't spend as much time after the song was written fine tuning every little thing. We were just like, hey, we can send it to a pro who can do that for us, which is awesome. And that was Kyle O'Connell, also from 156 Silence. We were lucky enough. He mentioned to me at a show one time, he was like, yeah, I really want to do more mastering and mixing. And I was like, boy, do I have a job for you. Yeah. Hey, please. So he was wonderful. Shout out Kyle. He's awesome. But
yeah, it sounds great. I was going to say no slight on your first EP you guys released.
Oh yeah, no.
A lot of great songs on it. It's one of those deals too with bands where it's like a long EP, right? Like it's 7 tracks.
Yeah.
Which there's some band you reference older bands. There was the era of like bands releasing an album every year where like 7 or 8 tracks would have been considered a full length album.
Exactly.
Right. So terms don't matter. But I do have to say this upcoming EP, it sounds fantastic.
That's all Kyle, man. He did a killer job.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing where it's good if you can, and again, if you're like some virtuoso with mixing, do your own stuff and save the money, you know what I mean? But if you feel like that's not something you want to spend your time on, or you feel like somebody else can do it better, it's like, God. Why not send it out and focus on the, I don't get it. I think I have like hearing loss that I can't do it or something. Well, I've tried so many times,
as an editor, and I'm sure with you as well, you hear the same thing over and over and over. You're used to that. You're very used to that. But the problem when you're doing it with mixing is it's like, okay, I've heard this song 100 times in this way. Suddenly I add some compression. Suddenly I add this, and everything sounds off. But it's supposed to sound off, but I'm supposed to take a break, but I'm supposed to come back, and I'm supposed to fit. I'm like, how do these people do it? It's amazing what they're able to do. And I props to those people because, man, that is not my world.
Yeah, I had early on in this show, I think it was like it was under 20 episodes, and this one will be close to the 70th or a little over.
Congratulations, dude.
Thanks. I had Joey Sturgis on, pretty acclaimed producer, and when he would try to explain to me how he approaches these things, I was like, yeah, but like, what knobs do you turn to make it sound good? Because I need that. Like, I understand your big artistic like thought piece, but the thing is, like, I think you really can't teach it down to that level. It's either you got it or you don't, or you spent the time making enough shitty songs that you eventually get to the point of making better ones mixing wise and all that. And it's like, God, but yeah, no wonder he is like a millionaire or whatever. Right? He spent the time. I will not. I refuse.
Exactly. But, you're like, man, it would be like, I'm sure my second one would sound better than my first one, but right now I kind of just want to focus on the artistry of the writing and like let someone, pay someone like Kyle to do it.
Right? Yeah. You're still doing some producing, right? You're producing your own record.
Yeah.
And I know you guys cope, but then you're still sending it out to somebody for the final touches and the bells and whistles, which is the way to go. I personally think.
I agree.
But there's something I wanted to go back to a little bit because I empathize with this a lot, and then we'll get into the music a little more here. Is you talked about that when you were growing up, you primarily or more exclusively just got to listen to Christian radio or Christian music, right? My household was not like, it wasn't like exclusively like that. We could listen to some secular stuff, no parental advisory, but the big push was all Christian stuff. So like it was even like, when like Christian pop punk bands like Reliant K came out, or there was other ones, the kind of B-tier ones of like Hawk Nelson or Stellar Cart or these other ones.
POD before they like decided they weren't Christian, like, and then my mom was like, "You can't listen to them anymore."
And then you get, I love what you reference about like getting into Christian metal of like I would assume would be like Under Oath, Devil Wears Prada,
Demon Hunter. Yep.
Demon Hunter, Haste the Day maybe, because I know
Yep.
they at one time were. And what's so funny is like in our lives as adults too, like 80-90% of those bands don't claim that and don't want anything to do with it now. You know, it was such a, I had an episode early on in the show like where we broke down a little bit of like that Christcore phenomenon where it was like it became almost a parody of itself that they
totally.
That it became a marketing ploy, right? Because it was a way to get the youth groups to go to Warped Tour.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's
totally what
it's
it
kind of
was.
got a built-in audience of moms and their kids that are like, it's like, yeah, like we're gonna listen to you. It's a smaller pool, but you also get more attention more quickly. It's an interesting phenomenon for sure.
Yeah, and then there's always the bands that break over. Like, there's always the joke about like Creed, that Creed started that way. Even Creed started as a Christian rock band, and then they just went over to the side. Like, how many bands have done that over the years? It's so funny. I would say Skillet did that, but they did not.
They've leaned into it in not a pretty way. Not a fan. Oh boy, John Cooper.
Everyone thinks it's cool to go on Candace Owens' talk show for being a hard rock band. That's really punk of you. No, I'm gonna get in trouble for saying much more than that. But I was just, it's always fun to talk to people that grew up from all that stuff because as an adult, in hindsight, it's so silly. Like it was such a marketing ploy to get these kids that like weren't allowed to listen to the music everyone else was to instead listen to these bands that ended up becoming secular bands later on that they all followed anyway. I don't know. It was. And it was also a pipeline, like you said, to getting into the non-Christian metal bands because they all toured together. It wasn't like there was like a metalcore tour for Christ going on or whatever.
No,
like it was like, you'd have, it was just an interesting time to say the least. But it was good that we got to get into some breakdowns before we were allowed to
exactly.
The word
exactly.
or whatever, right?
There's still like good Christian bands out there. Convictions just put out a new record.
Oh yeah,
there's great
ones.
But when my mom,
Wolves at the Gate as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love those guys. But when my mom gets in my car, and she sees, she's like, "Oh, is that a Christian?" She still is like convinced I listen to Christian music. So she's like, "Is that a Christian band?" I'm like, "Yeah, Mom. Pupil Slicer. They're Christian. Yeah, like absolutely, sure." But then you see
decapitation. Yeah,
I haven't really let her listen to a lot of our music, so there's that too.
I was gonna say the only reason I felt comfortable bringing that up because after reading the lyrics, I was like, I'm pretty sure this guy's not going that route.
No, not anymore. Not anymore.
No, and there's nothing wrong with it either.
No,
way, but I just thought it was, I thought it was funny to see that a little bit and hear this in context. So I guess to go from there a little bit before we get into breaking down the EP.
Sure.
Tell me, you mentioned a little bit earlier, but tell me a little bit, whether you want to talk about the previous EP or just your guys' writing in general, what the writing process is for you, where you kind of take inspiration from. Is it kind of like what I said to you earlier about what I do, where somebody, just sends over what they're doing.
Yeah.
You put your stuff over the top of it, and then you decide whether or not it's good or you need to make tweaks. Is it more collaborative and doing, voice calls and all that kind of stuff? Just what's the writing process like for the Cutting Tides? Because, again, a little bit unique compared to a lot of other bands people listen to or a lot of up-and-coming bands because, again, you're not around each other very much at all, right?
Yeah,
so just kind of speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, it is fairly collaborative. We do jump on a lot of voice calls, and a lot of times it is, like you said, he'll send me a riff or something, or a little bit of an instrumental, and I'll say, "Hey, I think this is cool. Let's build off of that." But we really don't. I know there's multiple different writing styles, like that some bands that I've talked to that say, "Hey, this guy basically writes the song without lyrics or whatever, and then sends it out, and everybody kind of adds their little tweaks." Sean and I don't really do that. The way we've done it is we kind of approach the song piece by piece and kind of also take a general feel of like, okay, this is the lyrical theme we want to go for. This is the kind of feeling that comes along with it. There's not really a wrong way for us to write one. We've sat down and written an entire song in one weekend, and then like we needed a break after that. We've done it where it's been like over the course of about 6 months. But a lot of times it is like, or it's either like I'll send him a riff or he'll send me a riff, or I'll have this idea in my head of like, okay, this is how this is going to go. For one of the songs, the kind of the weirdest song on the new EP called Thalassophobia, Is it that? Yeah, Thalassophobia. It's either Thalassophobia or Thalassophobia, but it was really something that just like sparked into my brain, and I recorded it, and it was really like kind of gothic southern, not even gothic, but like southern spiritual. And I sent it to Sean. I was like, Sean, I've got this great idea for the song. And he's like, I don't think this is going to work. And I was like, no, just wait. And then I put it to guitar, and then he was like, oh, I see where you're going with this. But so there, it's just a multitude of different ways, but it's very collaborative. Yeah. His kind of leadership style, as well as my kind of leadership style, we're both very good at collaborating together, I think. So haven't screamed at each other too many times. I was going to say,
I kind of thought it had to be that way a little bit, because from what I could tell from the songs, and again, Thalassophobia is
isn't that a turd?
It is, but it's a good name for the song. But it's unique. At least it'll get the whatever they call it, the SEO, the search engine optimization, or whatever. There you go. If people could spell it, right?
Yeah. Good luck.
Hey, if people listen to this kind of music, they know how to spell long words.
True.
That's what half the song titles are.
I'll probably put a V in the of, and it'll be fine. Like, yeah.
Yeah. There you go. But it's especially that song, I was like, there's no way there wasn't specific collaboration between both of them on this, because it's not a like, here's a riff, here's a breakdown, you know what I mean, where somebody could have just spliced together two different ideas, or you send one over, because like there's a lot of, you said Sean kind of does the synth and kind of programming side of things.
Yeah,
there's a lot of that on that song, which was like a cool it was a cool surprise, you know what I mean, when I was listening through it, because the first two songs, I mean, the first song, the intro, like it really catches you off guard when it goes all heavy with it, which I love when bands do that. Starting from this like angelic moment to just like extreme
Sean was like, "Are you sure about this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure."
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. But that one has a complete, like, I don't even know what to describe influences to the third track, Thalassophobia. Like, we'll get into it again in just a bit here, but like clearly collaborative, because it's like way too unique and weird in a good way for somebody to just sit down, do that, send it to their bandmate, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I know what to do to add some atmosphere here." It's a song that like would need collaboration from everyone involved, I think, to make it cohesive, which it is. Well, that's great to hear. It's cool to hear that you can do so much collaboration and kind of back and forth with kind of being distanced. That's a good thing to be able to do. Let's go ahead and break down the EP, and then if there's other little things afterwards from your guys' other stuff or what you got going forward, we can dive into that. But the upcoming release, again, coming out in November 1st. I have
November
that right.
1st. Yep, day after Halloween.
Is which this is a hell of a Halloween record, actually. That'll be good for like the Halloween hangover. It'll be good on that day.
Thank you.
But Drawing the Dead and Desperate, 4 tracks. We got Bloodbreather, Red Room, which is the one featuring Jack Murray of 156 Silence, Thalassophobia, and Absolution. Again, really, really solid EP for 4 songs. I think it clocks in at 17 minutes or so. So each song's got like a decent length. You're not doing like 3-minute punk songs, but you're not making 10-minute prog metal.
Nothing like that.
What am I looking for? Like epics or whatever.
Blackened deathcore type of.
or some 22-minute breakdown or something.
Exactly.
But go ahead and speak to, you talked about the kind of music writing process you guys have done a little bit together, but go ahead and speak to like where the idea for this album came from, or this EP came from sort of conceptually. Is it like 4 different songs you guys got together and just decided to put together because you liked, these are the 4 of the best that you had? Was there kind of an idea behind all of the different songs, like lyrically or conceptually? Because it feels like there's a big ebb and flow. The file you sent over was one long track of like 17 minutes.
Right.
And I had to make sure to like tab when I knew one of the songs was ending, because it was like very, it worked really well going in and out, So just kind of speak to where the concept for this came from, and what kind of made you decide to put these 4 specific tracks together.
Yeah. So, when we first decided that we were going to write music, I honestly never thought we were going to release anything. I figured we would just write it and we would have fun. Maybe we would post some clips on Twitter and have, but we got so many nice comments, so much good feedback, so many people saying, "Hey, this is creatively really, really good," and we had so much fun with it that it was like, all right, let's try to step up the game. And I'll say I appreciate the your comments about kind of the EP overall, because that's one of the things that I don't quite feel like I got done as much as I wanted to get done, was kind of gluing the EP together as one big piece. It felt like kind of four different songs, because I mean, our kind of rule of thumb is if there's an itch to scratch, let's scratch it. We don't want to be just straight up metalcore. We don't want to be straight up deathcore. We don't want to like shoehorn ourselves into one specific thing unless that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
And so the rule of thumb is just kind of like, hey, if you feel like doing it, let's do it. I mean, and I do listen to a lot of metal, so that's where a lot of my inspiration comes from. Sean tends to listen to quite a bit of metal as well, but he also likes more progressive things, proggy things, like Tool and some of those bands are major influences for him. So when we approached this record, I had some ideas in mind, and we just kind of threw ourselves at it. As far as like the name, Drawing the Dead and Desperate, we kind of felt like the overarching theme was this kind of, and I tend to find this in a lot of my lyrics, is just this kind of like a desperation. In our first EP, it was a little bit more overt, kind of about where I was at with my faith at the time. I'm still not quite sure where I'm at, as a person who grew up very Catholic. I've kind of pushed away from that a little bit, but not entirely. But I think that I think in order to be effective in that concept, you have to challenge every bit of it. And so a lot of my songs go there. Bloodbreather, for instance, is about my little brother who had some very serious lung disease, and actually has since had a double lung transplant. The artwork for that specific single is actually the picture of his lungs, just like sitting on the table, that I kind of chopped up and made weird looking. So, there's a lot of, when you approach something like that, there's a lot of questions for God, like, hey, what the fuck? Like this kid, like, does not, he had cancer, he was, there's all sorts of abuse types things. And, it's just kind of like, what the hell? Like, what did this kid do to you? And so you have to kind of challenge some of that stuff. And that kind of thought process kind of stretches throughout the album, just like this kind of desperate, like seeking something. But no, that we didn't necessarily start that way. We just had some concepts that we liked, and we started writing and came out with a weird EP, and here we are. So I don't know if that answers your question at all.
It does. It does. It does. Definitely speaks to what you're going for with it overall. I think the title is pretty. I think the title is good because it definitely fits with the lyrics that I was able to read through that you were nice enough to send over today. It definitely fits with that, like dealing with a lot of like heavy topics, which you do in this quite a bit. And also that sort of feeling of like desperation, of like anxiety, of urgency, etc. That lends itself well to music of this, genre that can like really deliver that emotion, that emotion of dread and also urgency at the same time in various scenarios. So thanks for going over that. You already went into it a little bit here, but I thought you don't ever have to go too personal with it. You don't have to go too detailed if you don't want to, but if you're an open book, then let's dive into it. Let's start with Bloodbreather, which you giving that context makes that title a lot more like, oof, in a profound way. So you said your brother had double lung transplants?
Yeah. So the title Bloodbreather has multiple connotations because he's adopted. So he's technically not a blood brother, but I mean, he might as well be. This kid is ridiculous and has the wildest and wackiest sense of humor in the world. That's like, you cannot squash this kid. It's crazy. I mean, like 3 years ago or something like that, I remember I was sitting at work, and he's always been on oxygen ever since we adopted him when he was little, because there's a whole story there. His mother was homeless, and he got a lung infection. There's all sorts of things there, but I remember about 3 years ago, I was sitting at work and got the call that he had, I believe it was salivary gland cancer. And I'm just like, what the heck? And so through the process of chemo and various other things, he doesn't have use of half his face anymore. So it just kind of sits there limply, but he uses it to his advantage. He'll like look at you and like wiggle the one eyebrow he can move. And he just gives you this like shit eating half grin that you're like, screw you. He's great. But then
I love that.
And then through the process of writing this song, there was all sorts of like family life things going on. There was some, some emotional things he was going through, some abuse type of things. And I just was really mad, like I said, at God again. And so I was like, I'm just going to write this. And then during that process of writing it, I found out he was due for a double lung transplant, which would take him off of oxygen because his lung functionality was going really, really downhill. And it was like a whole crazy thing. And we found out afterward, it was like 3 months of absolute sheer pain and nothing good for at least 3 months for him after that. But he's much better now. I recently was with him as we went up on like a high ropes course, and I was like watching this kid like race across all this stuff like there was no care in the world. So awesome kid. But anyway, that's a little bit of backstory behind that. But yeah, that song is just kind of in general just so what the fuck. I mean, and I knew walking in, it was an angry song. There was a lot of anger there. Against my mom in particular, and against God in general. And so I knew walking in, I said, Sean, if we're going to write an angry song, let's do this. And so, I felt like it was, I kind of start the song off by saying like, never a prayer worth the air, because it is like, he would have to think beforehand about what he was going to say, because it was like, is this even worth expelling all the effort to say something like that? And so, yeah.
No, that makes sense. And all of those emotions, I can only imagine. One thing that you said that is, a little lighter part of it is, your brother's sense of humor.
Oh yeah.
With all of that going on, I work with, my day job is I work with people with disabilities, as a special ed teacher.
You're awesome.
And a couple of thanks. A couple of years ago, I had a student that he had a very, very, very rare disorder that was basically fluid building up everywhere, and it was a whole lot of mess. And part of it was that he developed a hump, but instantly on his own, just to kind of go back to that thing. Whenever it was Wednesday, he would come in, look at me, and like point. Because it was hump day.
Hump day.
Yeah.
I shouldn't laugh at this.
No, but like he thought it was hilarious,
exactly.
Right? It's the same kind of deal. It's like these just because somebody has has a major health problem, like in your situation, or people that I've worked with or whatever, like those people have. It's just like anybody. You have like a sense of humor about what's going on in your life day to day.
Exactly.
They probably have a better sense of humor than most people do. Because,
I agree.
They've been through it, and they could, like a lot of people in those situations can find, obviously it can be awful and daunting and draining and all that, but you can find your peace with it in some sense and find like a lot of humor. And it sounds like there's a little bit of that in that situation, at least, that would kind of put a smile on your face and all the, in the midst of all that. Right.
My wife has a brother who's severely autistic, and he's like 6'6". And very food motivated. If you look away from your plate for a second, he's got it in his hands. He's got the food in his hands. Yeah. The other night we went out to dinner to celebrate her mom's birthday, and somehow they had given, they gave him, I think, some weed or something to sedate him. Just not sedate him, but like kind of chill him out so that
him down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we could, and he was like, if there was food, like, he was grabbing it. It was like 7 feet away, and he was just like, whoa. And it was like, and to me, it's like, I mean, he's still like the sweetest kid ever. And it was just fun as heck. Like, you got to find humor in that kind of thing, because, like, they would do the same. My brother would do the same. I got two brothers, the one brother with the breathing issues, and then another one with fetal alcohol syndrome. And so props to you on working with kids with disabilities, because, man, we need good people in that field. A lot of good people.
It's a rewarding thing to do. I highly recommend people do it if you have if you have that what am I looking for? The proclivity to have patience or have creativity or whatever you do to work with people. It's fantastic.
Oh, they teach you so much. It's amazing.
Oh yeah. I think I learn more every day than they do. I don't know if that makes them really good teachers or me a really bad one, but I'll let the scholars figure that one out later. But I digress. Thanks for going over that again.
Oh yeah.
Topic that obviously is very, very, daunting and serious and specific. But like when I read through this, you could pull what's great about, what I always think is great about like good lyrical songwriting is making it evident that you're writing about something specific. Like you're not going this is obviously so generic to reach the most amount of people possible.
Yeah.
And that's why you've heard every single one of these metaphors in 10,000 other songs or whatever.
The undertow.
The undertow. That's right. Every metalcore song. And then on the other side, people can make things so specific and so niche that like it can be difficult to figure out what it's about, or like it's very clearly only about the singular thing. This, it feels like, most of it, obviously there's little things that after you say that are very specific within it, that can feel like anybody kind of having these same questions you're having as someone that, might still, have faith or struggling with faith when you're also seeing these, very serious situations. I mean, you could take a song like this and put it on to things going on more broadly in the world. Absolutely. And more of like, you know what I mean? Those kinds of things. To where it would still make sense. So it's clearly well thought out and obviously fucking angry, which fits the vocals and fits the instrumental very well. I got to tell you, like when it first came in and when I first put it on, because obviously I'd listened to the previous EP before, because I had gotten in contact through my band's Twitter page with Sean. I had checked out.
Yeah, shout out Dead Inside.
Yeah, thanks. But I checked that out. But when I put it on and I first heard this little like, angelic guitar and very like, very I don't know what the correct word is I'm looking for, but the vocals are very like have that sort of like reverb on it that would probably say like, like church choir almost or something on it almost.
Very choral. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it just dives straight into hell. It's like, holy shit. It was I had my headphones on really loud and I was working on some paperwork and it just boomed and I was like, oh shit. No, I didn't turn it down. But
hey, no.
That's tinnitus is fine. But it was cool and like really punched and I absolutely loved it. And again, lyrics really deliver what you were looking to do there accurately. Absolutely love it. Next would be Red Room, which again is with Jack Murray of 156 Silence. I say that different every time. Do they say 156, 156?
I have no idea. I mean, I say 156.
Yeah, that's what I don't think.
If you have a weird band name, it's like Sanguisabog or whatever. Like if you have a weird band name, I think you just get used to the idea that people are going to say it all sorts of ways. Like that,
it's just an emblem of its own that doesn't have any direct.
Exactly. That's why Dead Inside and The Cutting Tides is like these are fairly like easy to pronounce. We're good.
Yeah.
So
right. Yeah.
But then I read a song like Thalassophobia, and it's like good luck. Anyway.
Yeah. You gotta find the difference there somewhere to just make something impossible for
throw off the
spell.
podcasters. You don't want your job to be too easy.
That's right. But Red Room first, you said you kind of said it a little bit of how you got into contact with Jack and also with the band in general. Obviously, one of the other members mixed and mastered the EP. How did that all come about? And then we can kind of dive into the lyrical concept of it a little bit.
Yeah. So I was kind of late to the game, late to the party as far as metal music goes, and so. 2019 going into 2020 was really when I started kind of coming into my own and figuring out like, oh, I actually do like music quite a bit. I want to listen to more than just like the 2 or 3 bands that I was really jamming on. And so ended up finding Alan Harrington, shout out Alan Harrington on Twitter. And he was the one that I ended up kind of following a lot of his different bands that he was posting about. And then from there kind of reached outside of that with people like Kempires, shout out Kempires on Twitter, one of the best in the game, awesome dude, and has some great recommendations. And one of the ones he really shouted about was 156. And I'd heard like a live video on YouTube, and I was like, it's fine, like they're fine. But then one day something just like clicked in my brain, and being kind of stupid, I started like tagging them in everything on Twitter. I was like people were like, oh, what's your favorite band? I'd be like, at 156 Silent, and like just tag them all the time. And I had that weird name online called Squeege. And so they recognized me, and I, walked up to their merch table the first time they came to my town. And I was like, yeah, this is like Squeege from Twitter. And I was like so embarrassed. I was like beet red, and they're like, Squeege, like, oh my gosh, you're awesome. And just really, really nice guys, really sweet. And got the chance to chat with them for a while. They showed me some of their new music. Like, they were like, hey, come check this out, which was like, for like somebody who's into music, somebody who like from a band you really like, was just like crazy, amazing. And so just kind of kept up with them through that way. Would text them every once in a while, or on Twitter, and message them and be like, yo, like, I'm listening to the, your new stuff right now, or I'm listening to the same thing I've listened to 1,000 times and still noticing new details. And just really nice guys, and got in touch with Kyle, and chatted with him a few times, and he mentioned that he wanted to mix and master. And so we were like, would you like to? So that, and then through him, we kind of got in touch with Jack, and Jack has been awesome. He absolutely knocked it out of the park, was so gracious as well. Like, we thanked him at a show recently, and he was like, well, thank you for even considering me. And it was like, do you know who you are? Like, you're like the guy we would call if there was like one person on the list, it'd be like you at the top. So he's very gracious, very nice guys. And like I said, shout out people watching. Awesome. That's kind of how that whole train got rolling.
Very cool. Again, a hell of a feature. Your guys' vocals together are like daunting, to say the least.
He killed it, man.
Yeah, and you did too. Like the lyrics, and the vocals, and obviously like the instrumentation behind it. I don't mean to only talk about lyrics and.
Hey, you're a lyricist.
Vocals, yeah, I guess so.
That's what you do.
But to me, this one was Red Room can have a lot of connotations for people if you follow things on the internet over the past decade or so. There's a lot of people that would reference that, and a lot of organized crime or some really messed up things.
Oh, I was thinking like BDSM, but yeah, organized crime.
Oh, that too. There's also horror movies that reference
totally.
A Red Room, and I was just watching. I guess this is the room with the red door, but I was just rewatching Haunting of Hill House. I don't know if you're a big horror person.
I'm such a huge horror fan, dude.
But that show's fantastic. It's one of the best horror shows ever. In my opinion.
Flanagan killed it. So good.
Yeah, I am an apologist for every single thing that guy has made personally. So I'm a big fan.
So pretentious and yet so good at the same time.
It's so good. Yeah, that's right. And I'm a little pretentious myself.
No, I love it. I'm into it.
But I that's like what I thought of. There's like the room with the red door in that show, if you know what I'm talking about at all.
I do.
And that's what it made me think of as well. But speak to where the lyrics came from on this. Did you and Jack write these together? Did you write Jack's parts and then just kind of go from what this song's about in general?
Yeah. So with Jack's parts, I asked him, I said, hey, how much would it be for you to feature? How much would it be for you to write some? And he said, he gave me the answer, and I said, your style, no one replicates Jack Murray's style, his way of using vocals, and the kind of, he almost trips over himself when you read through his vocals. Like, it's like, he's like in the middle of a phrase, and suddenly it's the beginning of the next beat. And you're like, whoa, it's just like, his flow is amazing. So I was like, I knew if we got the chance to have him write, absolutely. So he wrote his part, and then we also had him sing, or I guess not sing, but do vocals on the last kind of end of the chorus to kind of finish the song off. Just because, when you have a vocal feature, I feel like you need to give them some time because it's a celebration of them as well. So, we had him do that. But the lyrics for this song really came out of, there was one night where I was just laying down, tossing and turning, and doing the thing where you just kind of see colors while you're trying to fall asleep, and red just kind of kept splashing across my vision. And I got up and I was like, I cannot sleep. So I sat down, and that's what I wrote the song about. I wrote kind of whatever came to mind. The term Red Room came about because Sean was like, I think that's the coolest part of the lyrics. Like, we should make that the chorus, so we'll call it Red Room. But really, it was just like it felt like, the chorus part is just banging my head over and over again. That's what it felt like. I was just like, I cannot get my mind to shut up, cannot get it to shut down. And so, coming out of Bloodbreather, it's not as heavy of a concept, but it is.
Well, no, but you don't always need some like overly, because especially like who, like as someone that has like dealt with that a lot myself, just kind of the special, off and on, you can feel yourself going a little insane in those moments.
Yeah.
And there's a ripe way to dig into the inner psychopath of your brain to pull some stuff out. You know?
You're hitting the nail on the head.
Well, yeah, I think it was the chorus is banging my head over and over again, right? That one, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Leaving my bloody fucking trails on the floor of the red room, and then what's the other? There's another line in here that really got me when I was reading through it. I'm trying to remember, but I digress. Either way, like it was, maybe it's just like the concept, like I just can't fucking. Oh, it was the first lines of just giving you 30 fucking seconds solitary to breathe, just a moment or two to finally get some relief. Like how many people haven't felt borderline insane when you're like going through insomnia, or you can't sleep at night, or you're dealing with some sort of like mental health issue or something?
Totally.
It's like you could pull some of that stuff out of you, and you're surprised at what sort of imagery you can come up with, Part of it reminded me, have you seen, since we're talking about horror movies, and this one like felt sort of like horror-ish to me in some level. What was it? There's a part that you talk about, leaving a bloody fucking smile on the teeth of the dead, like that kind of thing. It reminded me of, have you seen the movie? They're putting out a new one soon. Have you seen the movie Smile?
Yes.
Yeah, it just, for some reason, when I was listening through this and reading the lyrics, I just like had a picture of one of those people with that creepy ass grin before they start like breaking their own face.
Right, that movie. Sort of what I thought. Oh man, that movie was like one of those movies that you're like watching the trailers, like trailers are good. This is going to be a garbage movie, and then I watched the movie and I was like, this is actually like taking a really cheap concept and making it really fun. Really, it was really engaging. So yeah. There's a couple spots in the music video that we'll release that are like reminiscent of that type of thing a little bit. Just doing like the Kubrick stare with some smiling involved, and you're like, boom, we got a music video, bada bing.
Yeah.
So
no, that's great though. I love that. I love when people just like lean into the horror,
exactly.
Because like it lends itself so much to especially a song like this where it's just crushing almost the entire time. Like,
but see, this is where like I props to you on the one, the recordings you do, the one takes you do, because it's like I'm stupid enough to write songs where I don't think I could do that. And that's the benefit of being like a long distance band, is like I'm not touring, so like I'm just gonna do what I want.
There's a reason why I do some and I don't do others, though. I will say that.
Right? Yeah.
I told Simon, I was like, we get to 10,000 monthly listeners or some number that we'll probably never get to ourselves.
Shout out Dead Inside. Get them to 10,000 monthly listeners.
And I was like, I'll go over and I'll do a show, right? Like, or something. We'll figure it out. And then some of the songs, I was like, I'm like belting at the top of my lungs, and then going right into a scream. I'm going to have to run a marathon before I can do this. I'm going to have to get in the best shape of my life.
I know. It's like, I have to learn to like hold my breath for 4 hours, and then maybe.
That's the catch-22 of doing a project like I'm doing or you're doing. Is like, the scariest part is if it gets really successful.
Oh, God.
What do you do?
I haven't even thought about that. I don't know.
But yeah, this song is absolutely fantastic. Like I said, punishing and I mean that in a great way. And Jack's parts send it over the top. Absolutely love it. It's great that you're doing a music video for it. Makes sense. It's the signal to get people's eyes on it with the feature. And of course, that's coming out from us doing this. That's coming out this Friday. The music video is along with the single, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm stoked to see the reaction for it, and I'll be promoting it myself for sure.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
The next one on the docket here is
it's the hard to pronounce one.
Yeah, I'm pulling it back up so I can make sure I can read it. Thalassophobia, which I believe is an intense fear of deep water. Isn't that what that is?
Yes.
Right.
You did I don't know if you did your research. You already knew that, but you're fantastic either way.
Oh, I've looked it up ahead of time. I'm not that smart.
No, you're fantastic. You did your research.
I have read about this a little bit, because I have a little bit, like, I don't have like a full on where like if I was in that situation I wouldn't be able to handle myself, but like deep water freaks me the fuck out. It's like one of my biggest fears, probably because I saw Jaws too early as a kid or something.
Hell yeah.
But I remember like a couple of years ago, my wife's family lived in San Diego at the time. We flew out and we actually did kayaked out in the ocean to see humpback whales.
Oh my gosh.
And went out like over 2 miles out, and that's when I also remembered that I get motion sickness.
Oh no, poor dude.
But it was one of those things where I was facing like motion sickness and my basically this like
chum in the water.
Yeah. And it was like kind of brutal, but it was like a great, like it was kind of a cathartic experience for me afterwards, at least.
Oh,
in
absolutely.
the moment I was dying. In the moment I was absolutely dying. But afterwards it was actually like a really cool experience and kind of like got me over a few things. I guess it was kind of like exposure therapy.
Hey, heck yeah, dude. Take it.
But I would still definitely need Dramamine to do any motion whatsoever like that. But, can't get over that. But speak to this one a little bit. This is the one that I don't have the lyrics on hand for.
Oh yeah.
But that doesn't matter. You can speak to it anyway. We can go from there with it. Just kind of speak to, because again, this one instrumentally we should get to first before I go down that road, is by far the most different. It's primarily, if not, it's not all, but it's primarily all singing. With a lot of production or like a lot of programming going on, a lot of stuff I'm guessing Sean did that kind of put this like thematic sound over more melodic guitars than you're doing in a lot of the other songs, and your vocals as well. So kind of speak to like why this one's so different, where the thought was with that, and then we can get into the lyrics a little bit.
Yeah, so I have thalassophobia. Like you said, it's a fear of deep water. More specifically for me, the way it kind of manifests itself is like fear of something underneath me when I'm like swimming in the water. Like, and like I always, I have a pretty decent sense of humor on me, I like to think. And so I always joke about it. I laugh about it, but then I jump off a boat and then I'm like, oh, it's not funny anymore. I'm like immediately swimming back. Like it's not a place I want to be. It like freaks me out. And so the kind of the lyrics of this kind of were drawing inspiration from kind of, I take medication for depression, for anxiety, things like that. But that stuff doesn't just go away. When you take medication, even when you do the things you're supposed to do, it doesn't just like dry up and like suddenly I'm great. And so that's kind of where the concept for thalassophobia came about. It's this thing underneath the surface. Like on the surface, yeah, I'm doing great, but somewhere down there, like I feel it. It's still there. There's that mental health aspects that you just can't quite get to go away. That was the one I sent Sean. I had this kind of idea, this kind of thought, and I kind of wrote it as I was singing it. And that was the one that I sent to Sean, and he was like, "This sounds like soul. Like, what are we doing? This isn't for this project." And I was like, "No, just trust me. Like, I want it to be creepy. I want it to be like atmospherically kind of dense, kind of different, kind of heavier." And again, props to Kyle O'Connell, our mixer, because he helped with a lot of that stuff. Sean obviously did a ton of the synthy stuff, but Kyle O'Connell, there's this one part kind of toward the apex of the song where there's all of a sudden all these like synthy drums. That was Kyle. He did a phenomenal job, just kind of taking it and pushing it over the edge and making that a little bit more of a peak in the song, which is kind of a trudgy song. I don't see, I think sometimes the way I listen to music, I'll listen to albums and EPs, and then I also have a playlist. I don't see this one getting playlisted as much because it's like, well, what would it play next to? It was a fun one to write because I love metaphors. I love living in metaphors and things like that. But usually I just kind of brush past them in a song and like use them that way. But this one I was kind of like, I'm just going to attack this entire thing as one giant metaphor. And, and the end of it kind of goes back to the horror thing. Like I said, I'm a big horror fan. You are, it seems like, as well. And I love me a good horror movie that does not end in a happy place. Yeah, kind of the ending of that song is just like the idea of just like going down and drowning with it. Our first EP is called Drown in It. Just kind of embracing kind of the cold, dark part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you looped it back to the first EP because you're just that good. You're right.
Like, I don't know if I'm that good. I didn't lyrically do that. Right now I'm like, damn it, I should have probably done that.
Though. You did though.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
But no,
make me feel better.
I mean, again, like not to overharp on saying these same things over and over, but I think the song you say it's not going to get. You'd be surprised which songs end up getting picked up and which ones don't. Though
fair
you
point.
Honestly never know. This one is great. I think one thing that kind of again, it is like sort of like in a full album, it would be like the palette cleanser right before the second half of the album,
Yeah.
you know, where you kind of have like this kind of change up or whatever. Like a palette cleanser kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it really showcased your singing ability, which is good because when you're doing a heavy project like this, which is primarily going to be you like trying to sound as demonic and chaotic as possible most of the time, it's good to be able to still pull that out and not have to like do a separate project entirely. You know,
absolutely.
You know how many like metal vocalists end up having like doing some side project because they want to actually sing over some guitar chords. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I'm sure like anyone from like Phil Bozeman to Mike Haronica, like they do that because like I also like music.
I like all sides of music. Yeah, exactly.
You know,
it doesn't always have to be like intense.
Yeah. And it's cool that you're able to do that all within one project, which is nice, right? Because then you also don't have to run like a million different socials as well, which is the whole thing.
Oh, no,
that
thank
comes
you.
with being in bands.
I can
and music
barely
and
run
stuff now.
one, dude. I'm like,
you're telling me. Like I was told, I talked to some guy. I'll probably cut this out of the recording part, but I talked to a bigger podcaster about this show, and I was like, you know, I don't know, like I feel like I'm doing pretty well with it, but I don't know how to get over it. He's like, you just got to like post 3 clips a day on social media, like all weekdays. And I was like, dude, I no, I'm not doing that. Like, it's fine. You know,
I respect the heck out of, like, we have social media managers in our business, and like for like the TV show. And I respect the hell out of it because I just don't have the wiring. Like if I devoted that as my full-time job, I could probably learn the wiring, but like my brain does not think like that. I'm like, crap, I don't know like how TikTokers, I mean, respect. I know a lot of people are like, oh, TikTok, blah, blah, blah. And but it's also like, that is
it's
hard.
Work.
Oh, it's so much work.
It's definitely work.
I was telling Sean, like, I love release season. I love seeing people, you know, finally receive this thing that we've been holding on to for so long. I hate pre-release season. I'm like,
yeah.
Well,
thanks for doing this.
Oh, no. Like, you know? This is great. It's the like, okay, I got 50 people I got to message, and I got to make sure I get them the right thing. And I got to think about all that. And I'm like, I just want to write music.
I got to find the right 30-second clip that doesn't give the whole song away, but also doesn't show some like boring transition part. Or,
exactly.
I definitely know what you mean. But let's get back to the song. It's great.
Thank you.
What I guess I'm kind of wondering, and again, this is more collaborative, like you said, between you, Sean, and your producer Kyle, or mixer Kyle, was like, what are some inspirations you have that you listen to that aren't like so much on the overly heavy side that would kind of bring this part out of you a little bit? Because like, I mean, you said you grew up, you know, Christian house, like you could get Christian, you know, you can get elements of this from like praise and worship stuff. Like I did the volume swells on lead guitar,
totally,
all the time in praise band, or did like the ethereal noises or whatever. Like, I'm not saying that's where you got this from, but where does that kind of side come from for you? Are there a little bit more like, you know, noisy type bands that you listen to, or like where does that kind of side of this project come from?
Yeah. So Sean's main kind of inspirations outside of like Tool, I mean, he's kind of like a metalcore person. I mean, like he has lots of different interests, and like prog is a big thing for him, but like some of his favorite bands, you know, Bad Omen, Spirit Box, like the good stuff. I just don't, I'm a little weirder. And like, as I kind of grow in my metal, in my taste, my musical taste, I tend to step outside of it. And that's why, like, you know, I mentioned Alan Harrington earlier. He's all metalcore, rah metalcore, and that's great. And I found a lot of good bands through there. And then I stepped outside of that and found, like I said, Kempires. His name is James. Great guy. Follow him on Twitter if you can. And he posts a lot more, like, you know, there's some blackened stuff in there. There's some more noisy type of stuff. There's some just weirder concepts. And I've kind of started picking that up. You know, Bell Witch is a little bit of an inspiration. One of the ones that I really like right now is Worm Shepherd. I think they're, obviously, you asked less heavy. They're way heavier than we'll ever be. But I think deep down, the main concepts are there, where it's like they might have a symphonic part underneath that's very simple, and they're doing all the complicated crap over it. And but that simplicity of something that you're sitting there just kind of humming along to, that just kind of grounds you in the chaos of it all, is kind of where I got some of that. And it was also like I had written this like part that was supposed to be a breakdown, and I was like, screw it, let's make it a song. So
Yeah.
like I said, I like to write generic metalcore stuff. It's fun, but like with Sean and I, the rules are there's no rules, and let's do something weird. So I don't know how, when you're so close to a project, I'm sure you understand this. You never quite know, like, did that happen? I don't know if it's really weird, or I don't know if it's like too weird, or it's not weird at all. Like, no idea where it lands, but I know I'm having fun. So that's the song.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think I asked that question a lot, and even for myself when I make music on my own, I'm not thinking like, oh, I wonder what like Sam from Architects would do at this part.
Exactly.
Wonder, you just like sit down and like, what am I gonna yell into the void about today? Like that's kind of what it is, right?
Yep.
And then whatever comes, and it can be way different, or it can be, pretty on the nose of other things you've made, and all of the above are great. To get to the last song, and this one struck me when I looked at the lyrics as the most I don't know, as the most interesting and like eye-catching with some of the lyrics, because it's, to me at least, covering a very serious topic.
Yes.
That or topics that you dive into, that it maybe seems like you're looking at it from a certain perspective of someone else. I don't know exactly where did this all come from. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, so we'll dive into it. The last track here is Absolution. Again, heavy hitting song, crushing. The lyrics, I would say, are even heavier than the music is. Like,
I would say
some of it's really fucking raw. Go ahead and speak to where this one comes from, and then I obviously have a question. We talked a little bit earlier. There's definitely a different voice on here, and you kind of said it's a sort of kind of not feature that isn't that, or if that was some magic work you guys did on the track. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But go ahead and speak to Absolution, where the lyrical inspiration came from, and kind of the bells and whistles there.
Yeah. So it really started with, there was one day where I was sitting at work. I work from home, which is awesome, but I was sitting at work, and my wife is a big Taylor Swift fan. And, Taylor Swift, she's a billionaire. I kind of, whatever. Like, but AI porn of her came out. And not only what did it come out, but there was a lot of people that were like, yeah, fuck Taylor Swift. Like, I'm going to share this. So it was everywhere. And then there was a bunch of people being like, hey, you shouldn't do this. And I just had this sludge in the pit of my stomach. There was something in there that I was like, something about this is really bothering me. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't do anything. So I sat down and I was like, what the hell do I do? Like, I don't know if I need to I think I took a walk, and I was like, I cannot shake this. So I started writing lyrics, because what it ultimately came down to was kind of society's view on women in general, just like what they are, what they should be. I have some very dear people in my life that struggle with severe body dysmorphia that are women, and that is a huge. It's just like there's so much culture surrounding it that doesn't apply to men, and there's so much pressure on women. And it just kind of all came crashing down on me one day. And like, I'm blessed because I don't have to deal with that every day. I could not imagine having that pressure every day. I couldn't imagine having to wake up every day and thinking like, oh, I have to look my best for this meeting. I'm like, I've got like a backwards ball cap on and like a t-shirt, and that's fine. But for a woman, they might think, no, I got to look more presentable, or I got to rephrase this email or whatever. So it kind of started with that, and society's view of body image and things like that. And as I was writing it, I turned to my wife, and I was like, hey, I would love to have you sing on this chorus, because this is not my song. It's not a song that I can speak to. I can speak to my anger about the subject. I can speak to the sludge in my stomach about the subject. And she had just got done listening to, and she's shared some of the quotes with me. I haven't read it yet, but she shared some of the quotes with me. The Brock Turner's, the person that Brock Turner raped, and actually the cover of that particular song is a picture of Brock Turner. Fuck Brock Turner, by the way. and she had just gotten done listening to her memoir, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And my wife was feeling absolutely empowered and just like felt like this was a really special thing. So the chorus ended up, I was like, hey, let's, why don't you sit down, write some lyrics? She wrote that entire chorus, and that changed the entire tide of the song, because now it wasn't just about women in general, but it was about rape culture, and it was about so many other aspects of it. And there's points in the lyrics where I'm screaming, and I'm screaming from the perspective of Brock Turner. And she's, just saying like, let me be. I don't, there's all these expectations. There's all these things. And the news clips at the end of that breakdown are all from the Brock Turner case as well. And so, yeah, like you said, like lyrically, the heaviest song I think I've ever probably written. But it came from a place that was just like, so like, powerful, that it was like I can't ignore. I couldn't move on with my day, and I think it speaks volumes that I was able to have my wife on it, because she's a very, very powerful woman, a very, very strong woman who's gone through a lot of things, and that's my favorite song we've ever written, and in large part that's due to her. So I'm very, very pleased with that.
She knocked it out of the park. It's a seriously. Great fit. It was one of those things that I kind of turned my head. I was like, wait, that's clearly not.
Yeah,
Ian
no, I can't do that.
I was like, the only thing I thought was like, I was like, these guys are. I knew at least one of you was very like. Or I figured one of you might be like program savvy enough. You never know if someone's using a voice emulator. You never know.
That'd be horrible.
I know. Well, that's what I was like. I was like, when you said, "Oh no, it's not really a feeture," I was like, "Oh wait, what the fuck is this?"
Yeah.
But that makes more sense. It's your wife.
Yes.
Well, she nailed it. It adds a lot of like unique character to the song.
Yeah.
And also, I think like you hit a nail on the head that was needed in it. Because it really showcases like the lines in here that I'm not. I have no problem with lyrics like this at all. I'm just not going to read them for like getting banned on YouTube when this gets recorded.
Yes. Yeah.
But no. But that's the thing though, is I think sometimes with songs like this about real serious topics, like what you're essentially talking about here is a critique or anger at rape culture, right?
Yeah.
And whether you're talking specifically about the issues of AI pornography for celebrities, which is so fucked up, or a real case like Brock Turner.
Yeah. AI pornography has so many implications for women in everyday life.
Yes.
So many.
Yes.
I mean, like as a man, you're like, yeah, AI is scary. As a woman, you're like, but anyway, carry on. So
yeah. Well, no, you're good. But I think like not censoring and not necessarily looking for the most euphemistic or PC language in a song like this is the way to go. I think going harsh, because this topic and the reality for people to deal with it on a day-to-day basis is extremely harsh. It needs to be delivered that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you sugarcoat the worst things in the world, the only thing you're doing is making the language nicer. You're not making anything nicer about the reality.
No.
So again, like, this song is I was like, kind of it was one that I went back before I like went and re-listened. I went and re-listened through the whole EP several times, but each time I found myself going back and listening to this one more time before I went back, which tends to happen for me every single time. Anyone listening to this to the podcast that has listened over the year, like I say this every time, but it's usually either the first song on a record or release or the very last one that I always end up really, really liking, because people seem to always put the one that is maybe like either in this case like the most severe, or like the one that was like really pulling at you the most, or maybe it's like the baby that one person in the band loves that like they're not really sure anyone else is gonna enjoy, but they really, really enjoy. It's like the cathartic one, and this like really scratched that idea of like this one just really being pounding and really being like, if you had made a 12-song record, this would still be the ender. You know what I mean?
Much, yeah.
So again, really encourage everyone to, again, my personal favorite on this would be Absolution, but all 4 songs are fantastic. This is a top-notch EP. again, previous one was great. This one really puts things over the top. I think is big for you guys production wise, big for you songwriting wise, and definitely like a clinic with the lyrics. So I really appreciate you diving through all of this for me.
Well, gosh, I mean, I gotta say, that means a lot because I mean, when you release a song, you're like, you've spent so much time with that baby. You're like, I have no idea what this baby looks like. Like, it could be the most adorable baby in the entire world, or it could be the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I know I like bits and pieces of it, and there are bits and pieces. I'm like, I wish it didn't look like that. But that means a lot to hear you say it. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, just to reiterate before I kind of do a few last minute things here before we wrap up. Sure. Drawing the Dead and Desperate will be out November 1st. Of course, when this episode comes out, Red Room and the podcast and the music video of that song, along with Jack Murray of 156 Silence. By the way, is he in the video with you guys, or
no,
is it
I didn't want to make him do that.
Yeah.
We were on tour.
Yeah. I know. I guess I just figured I'd ask. But music video for Red Room coming out on October 4th. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you would want people, this will either be released like the day before, day of, or the Monday after the release itself. Is there anything you would just kind of want people to get out of this? Any kind of lasting statements on this, I guess, before we wrap up?
I guess the statement would be support your small bands. There's a lot of passion in there. There's a lot of weird creativity that goes into it and a lot of work that goes behind something like that. I just appreciate the time, appreciate you listening. Also, listen to the Powerless podcast. It's awesome. Brandon has been awesome. Also support your women, because that's what we leave you with at the end of the thing, the end of the EP.
Yeah.
So,
1,000%. All that is a great way to kind of wrap things up there. I've got a couple last things here.
Yeah.
If you've got the time.
I do.
I have one hypothetical I'll ask you. I haven't been asking everybody this, but you're a fun guy, so I think I'll ask this for you. And then I'll just have you plug where people can find the band, and then we'll pick a song off the EP to play at the end as well. Again, this will be coming out right around the time of the release, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
For the song you pick. But the hypothetical I've been asking some bands over the course of this podcast is, say, let's do it a little different with you, since you and Sean, it's a 2-piece, and you can't, you can't play fully live, just the two of you, I'd assume, unless you want to really go out and find a way to do that. You never know. But say you guys are going out on tour, so we'll have you and Sean in the mix, and you get to add any band members, living or dead, from your favorite bands to make your perfect band lineup. And in this case, for the Cutting Tides, who are you adding to the band to go on tour with you to be the musicians with you guys when you go out on tour?
Oh, that's a great question.
And if you need me to look up people, if you have to say so-and-so from band, I can look that up for you.
Yeah, the lead guitarist from Invent Animate has my heart. Good Lord, that man is insane. I don't remember his name, so I see you Googling. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Is that Keaton Goldwire?
Yeah, I believe so.
That sounds right,
Just
right?
the writing. The writing that comes out of that man is like, oh my gosh, how? Yes.
Yeah, that band's absurd.
Yeah. They're so good. They're so good. For bass, I mean, my buddy Sean, that's great. But for tone wise, Lucas from 156 Silence has some insane tones. I love the way he plays bass. He's also got great stage presence.
So he'll be like your front of house manager doing all the tones.
Exactly.
So that way Sean can play
exactly.
Still. And Sean doesn't have to worry about the tones. You got them to do it.
Yeah, exactly. As if we weren't like a 156 project already. Like that. I was like, I got to remove that from my name. I don't want people being like, oh yeah, they're like the same thing. No, don't ruin their good name. But I have one, but I cannot think of who that would be. But honestly, anyone who I'd get along with, anyone chill, who's nice and reasonable, and I'd be down. I feel like that's important in a crowded van.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's more important than if someone's really talented, is if they're not a dick when you're on tour.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, how do you get five guys in a van together and they don't kill each other on the way? I'm like, it's got to be close.
Yeah, that hasn't worked out for me yet with projects that I've been able to leave it at.
Someday I'm gonna see you touring through Spokane and be like, "What's up?" So
yeah,
it's gonna happen.
There we go. Yeah, when I have gray hair and I'm touring, like doing like the front of house for
extremely famous for like
yeah
opening for Metallica 2 or whatever. Yeah.
Metallica 2.
Well, Metallica might be done by that point in time if you got gray hair.
No, so. they'll do the Futurama deal and just put their heads in the canisters and then they'll just perform live. Yeah.
Hey.
So we got the guitarist of Invent Animate. We've got bass to some degree. Obviously, Sean's playing bass, but we've got the bass player from 156 Silence.
I guess I need
we've got
Sean.
Drummer to be determined. And then, so are you doing guitar? Would you think? Here's my question for you: with what you do, would you do guitar and vocals at the same time if you played live?
Oh my god!
Yeah, you'd go front man with it, right?
I feel like I'd have to. Like I'm tempted to just be like, yeah, I'd toss the vocals to someone else, but like I feel like the vocalist is kind of like
that's kind of hard to do.
Of the sound.
Yeah.
But like I don't want to have to do all the like lung exercises in order to do that live. So I'm tempted to just like toss somebody in there, but I don't think I can do that.
Well, what you do is you get a rhythm guitarist, and then at certain parts when there's an instrumental, you get to get out a guitar, and then there's three guitarists.
Bingo. Yeah, I just like swing it around me, smack myself in the head, and then I'm unconscious for the rest of the set.
Like right here by your mic stand, you grab it off, throw it on.
Yeah, and then I miss, I fall, and then I fall off the stage. It's all a disaster, and this is why I don't play live.
You know what? But you know what? Then you get the social media clip that makes you big because.
Oh man, I would take that. I would take that. Yeah. I'm not able to write it to the Hellfire at this point, so I'm gonna need like some serious accident or something that's gonna put me on the map. So
that's right.
Okay, figure it out.
And
do you need like a viral clip for this? Because I could start like yelling at you and like calling you bad name.
Please don't.
Well, I don't know. It could do well on TikTok. Just like vocalist goes off on Brandon from the Powerless Pod. Like,
Yeah, as if there's not enough podcast clips of like white dudes screaming at each other about nonsense on social media. Yeah, we don't have enough of those, right?
Fair. Okay. All right, we'll figure something else out then.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, Ian, thanks so much for doing this with me. I appreciate your time. Just plug where people can find the band on socials and all the good stuff, and then just pick a song from the EP that we'll play at the end of this.
Yeah. You can find us on Twitter. We're very active. Well, we're medium active on Twitter, but we are always retweeting stuff. So you can find us on Twitter, really active, and then the band's on Twitter at The Cutting Tides, and then on Instagram also, I believe it's at The Cutting Tides as well. Sean manages that, so it actually is well managed, unlike the Twitter, which I manage, and that's poorly managed. It's a whole thing. So. But yeah, just you can check us out there, find us, listen to our stuff. We appreciate any and all feedback. Like I said, we're young musicians, so we're just thrilled to be here, man. That's it. That's all this is.
Absolutely. And again, of course, all of those links as well will be in the notes for anybody listening on the recorded
Brandon,
podcast side of things.
You're a king.
And thanks. And then I appreciate that. And then again, just pick one of the 4 songs to play at the end here.
Sean gonna be mad at me if I pick Absolution. Let's.
Well, here's what we can do. For sure, I'll put this out after the release or the day of, so then it won't matter, right?
Okay.
So then you can pick. It won't be like a
happen to be. We're releasing Red Room on that day, so I guess we'll just do Red Room. We'll play it safe and then make people wait for Absolution for now. But listen to that song when it
sounds
comes out,
good.
It's awesome. So.
Sounds good. All right. Yeah, we'll play Red Room featuring Jack Murray of 156 Silence off of the upcoming EP, Drawing the Dead and Desperate from The Cutting Tides. Thanks again, Ian, so much for doing this. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brandon. Have a good day.
Trying to take a walk on the wild side. I've been